Alright, once we've done this, what we basically need to do is work with Vela. Remember that Vela contains these data. Notice that Vela has the name field, the email field, the phone number, and the message. Everything I need to fill out in my form: name, email, phone number, and message. Now, I have to sort this information into each variable, meaning save the first piece of data in the name variable, the second in the email variable, and so on with the other two remaining pieces of data. So, I'm already starting to create them. I'm creating the name variable. I'm going to save this in Excel. I'm also creating email. Also creating phone. These are all the pieces of data I'll need later to send to the form and message. Alright, now remember that to set the variable I have to do the following. I need to use value, which is the data from where I'm going to get the information, position 0 in this case, and this will go into name, right? So when I run it, we can already see that the first piece of data, which is this one, the first position, which is position 0, is saved in name. Now, that's fine. I can keep doing the same thing with the second data, the third, and the fourth. But what happens if value had 106 elements? Would I have to do 106 variable assignments? The answer is no. I'm going to use a more efficient way, so I come here. Let's go to a module called System Advanced, where I select set multiple variables, and what I'm going to do is call value and tell it, from this variable, I need to fill in. This is important. How are the variables filled in? It's according to how they're ordered in value. That is, the value, remember, I'm going to do this, I'm going to close here. Look, first comes the name, then the email, then the phone number, and then the message. So, I stick to that order: name, comma, email, comma, phone, comma, message. And remember that I have to use the same variables here, meaning the same variable names. So, look, I'm going to clear this data that's here. There's nothing here, and when I run this command, what will I get? I have the name, the exa, the data I want, the email, the data I want, same with phone, same with message. See how quickly we did it, and we didn't have to set 4, 5, or 20 variables with variable setting. Instead, with just one command, it can be done correctly. Alright, now let's look at the information. We have the name, it's correct. We have the email, it's correct. We have the phone number, it's not correct. Why? Let's see if you notice. We have this here, a decimal. And as far as I know, phone numbers are whole numbers, not decimals. So, what should we do? Basically, a simple variable setting where we indicate, oops, there it is, where we indicate the following. We go to the phone variable and we're going to specify that it's an integer. So, how do I set this in Python? Int. I open parentheses and inside the parentheses I call the variable. So, I'm telling it to treat phone as an integer, and this result I'm going to save back into phone. So, if I run it, look, the 0 or the decimal has disappeared from phone, and now I can work calmly because I have all the data and everything is in its proper structure. Alright, there's another way to do it too, with replace, for example. I have it here. I'm going to bring it here. We have phone here. We have. I call the variable as a string, right? Double quote, variable, double quote, dot replace. And here with replace, the structure of replace is single quote, what I want to replace, that is, the 0, close single quote, comma, and then what I want to replace it with. single quote. I open and close single quote because I don't want to replace it with anything. So this is another way to do it, and as you can see, there are several ways to do it. It's not that if we do it one way or another, it's right or wrong. As long as we reach the same goal, it's going to be correct. Alright, now we have all the information completely structured, classified, and processed. Now what we need to do is send this information where to? To the form. So how do we do this? Let's go here, let's go to the form, let's select this element, and by the ID we're going to send keys to web here. We're going to tell it where, what type of element it is, and what I'm going to send to it. In this case, for the name input, I'm going to specify exactly the name variable. Notice that when we go to the form doesn't have any information here, and when I run this, it already fills in the name that we need to complete. Alright, so let's do the same with the other elements. Let's do it quickly. We're here. Same thing with phone number. I'm extracting, notice that I'm extracting the ID because the ID is useful to me since it's a fixed ID. Remember that information. When it's a fixed ID, you can work with the ID. It's the same with classes, but with classes the information is more sensitive since the same class can be repeated for many elements, and in that case it wouldn't fulfill the well, we wouldn't achieve the same goal because, for example, several elements might have the same class, so it might not go to the element I want to target. Since the ID is unique for each element and is fixed, it works for us and we can use it without any issues. Now let's run it. Look, the phone field doesn't have any data. We run it, we enter the phone number, same with a message, and that's it. Now I have the complete form. Now what I need to do is click here. So I come here, same thing. I position myself up here and we see the ID. Is it fixed? Yes, or at least we assume it is. Obviously, this is all trial and error. It could happen that we think it's fixed and it's not, or we think it's variable and it turns out to be fixed. So this is trial and error. Alright, when I click here, notice, click on an object, I run it and the form is already filled out. Notice that when the form is completed, what it does is clear itself. The form itself does this to send the next one, to fill out the next item, in other words, so that if there are more rows, it fills them in with the corresponding information. But there's something important here that I can't overlook. Notice, once the form has been completed and the page has reloaded, it shows a message, right? So, since the page reloads, the first thing I need to do is check that the page, once it has, that it has reloaded, has loaded correctly. It could be that, I don't know, it restarts, reloads, or whatever, and it hasn't loaded properly. So, I do the same thing we did at the beginning and call the validation robot again, and I'm going to place it here after the validation. After the wait for object, sorry. Then, what I need to do is focus on this point. What's here? Here there's a message that, if you notice, every time I submit the form, what happens is this number increases, but everything else stays the same. So, what I'm going to do is take this text. Notice what I'm going to use it for now. I take this text, copy, XPath. I'm going to copy the XPath here. I'm going to extract text. Now let's see what extracting the text is useful for. Let's put info here. I'm going to extract it and notice that it brings me the whole message, right? The message is here, and I can save this in web. There it is. It's here. Now, this message is giving me the indication that the form was submitted correctly, meaning that I have successfully completed the form and can move on to the next element, which is what I intend and what I want. So, what I'm going to do is perform a validation. Let's come here and do a quick validation here. Let's consider a scenario where the specific data, which is intended to be sent, is encapsulated within the standard double quotation marks, specifically referring to the information or details that are being transmitted. So, let's see what is done, what happens. Remember that here we have 5 columns. Remember that we used these to complete the form and there's one extra. What this column is going to do is basically assign a value to this section in case the form was filled out correctly or incorrectly. Either way, it has to be filled in with the information. Why? Because this is the status that the robot will assign in each execution. So we come here, and if data send is found within the variable info, which we can see here, data send is inside the info variable. What I basically need to do is come here and write OK in cell E2. And if not, in the else part, in the else section, then not OK. That is, if it gets sent core, if data send is inside the info variable, it means the form was sent correctly, so I put OK. If data send is not inside the info variable, it means it wasn't sent correctly, so here I put not OK. Now, the same thing that I checked at the beginning. Notice that here I put E2, that is a fixed variable. When I have to go through each one, on every execution I first have to go to E2, then when this row runs, go to E3, when this row runs, go to E4, and so on. So, what we're basically going to do is start a counter, which will initialize before entering the form. So, we're going to start cont or counter. I don't have that variable yet, but I'll create it now. I'll start it at 2, right? And when this if finishes executing, what I'm basically going to do is add 1 to that counter. Why? Because I'm actually doing the consecutive addition in each execution of the for loop so that the goal is for its value to increase for both the the counter in each execution of the for loop. That is, first it will start at 2, it will go to E2, then the counter adds 1, so it will be at 3. So after reading the data from row 3, it will go right to cell E3, and so on. So here in E2 I put econt for counter. And with that, I'm making sure it writes it correctly in each execution. Let's save up to this point. And what we need to do now, basically, since we've finished with the execution loop, is basically come here and save, right? I save it outside the for loop. I save it here in WebinRS. And the same, I put the result to validate this action and call the validation robot again. And now what I need to do is log into Google so I can send that email by email. So I come here, I go to server configuration. Here I'm going to enter the variables I need to input, user, pass. And we assign the variable again. So, since we assign the variable, I call the validation robot again. And since I've opened another application here, I go to the validation robot and from the Gmail module I add the close server action, because otherwise it will keep running in the background and we don't want that. And now I also add the send email action automatically. Here I validated the connection. Here I am adding some crucial information regarding the sending of data. Good afternoon to you all. I am currently in the process of sending over the Excel file which contains all the necessary and relevant data. Best regards. Here what I do is send exactly the webinar res, which is going to be the, but if you notice, what I haven't done here is exactly this. I need to save it in a variable. Remember, always. Path oops, I lost the there it is. Path save. I save it here. I'm going to send this to Excel. And look, I automatically put path save here, much easier. Same thing here. I set it to path save. And see how quickly I do it once I've done that. Once I send the email, I close the browser, I close the email service. I also need to close Excel, and I also need to close the browser. Here, what I'm doing is closing all the applications that were left open that I used during the robot's execution. Now I save it here, and this has been our first robot applying all the knowledge covered in this course. I hope it helps you. I hope you can also build it, test it, and start playing around with the tool. And I also hope you'll be encouraged to get certified with us on our Academy page, because it's completely free and available to everyone. Thank you very much in advance, and I'll see you in the next course. See you later.